And welcome to Free as in Freedom Friday. That's right. This is all the freedom that you can handle in one live stream. That's what we're doing tonight. This is going to be me chatting with you guys in the YouTube chat. I'm going to take your questions and comments as long as it's freedom-loving questions. So it needs to be, about free as in freedom. I'm talking about the 4 freedoms, freedoms 0 through 3. You guys know the 4 freedoms. I don't have to tell you guys that. All right. How is the audio? Because I am not monitoring the stream, so I don't have headphones on or anything. How is the audio sounding to you guys? I was actually having some issues getting set up for this thing here. My computer was kind of acting up. I don't know if it was a bad update, but I was actually having issues with my window managers crashing on me, all of them. I think it might have been a driver problem. What I did is I ran an update, and I had some pretty important packages update. The kernel updated, Mesa updated, both kernels. I have the LTS kernel and the standard kernel on my system, and both of them had an update. I actually logged into the latest LTS kernel, and it seems to be a fix to the problem. I don't know what the problem was earlier, but I sat down about an hour before the stream started just to do some test recordings. And things were not working. Camera and audio was glitchy and stuttering, and then window managers were crashing. I don't know what the problem with my computer is. Maybe I just need a fresh install. It's been so long since I've done a fresh install on my main production machine. Maybe I just need to wipe out this installation and reinstall at some point. I've got so much bloated stuff on here. Got more than 2,000 packages installed here on this Arco Linux. All right, everybody says the audio is good. Cool. Let me read a little bit of the YouTube chat here. Got a lot of folks here early today. Let me kill the YouTube dashboard here. I was previewing the video, but I wasn't previewing the audio here. Everything seems to be looking good. How is the stream? Is it buffering at all? On my end, it looks like the network is okay. So looks like my internet is not bad today, which my internet is usually pretty good, although the last time I did a stream was the patrons chat that I did this past weekend, and I was having some issues doing that. All right. We had a question from Amir about frame tearing. He says, when he installs a compositor in Manjaro, everything works fine, but when he installs a compositor on other distributions, it doesn't work fine. He sees frame tearing. Probably a driver issue. I mean, depending on what distros you're talking about, unless they're all other Arch-based distros, then you got to deal with different kernels, different video drivers. There's stuff that affects compositing. I couldn't tell you exactly why, because that's not a question I could answer, right? If you want a legit answer why that might be the case, I mean, you would need to probably ask the guys behind that particular compositor. If I'm assuming it's PyCom, what was Compton, maybe open an issue on their GitHub or GitLab or wherever they do bug reports, if you want a real answer. But the general answer is, why does some stuff work on one distro and not on the other? It's different versions of software. That's always the case. Rolling releases, obviously, are going to have much newer software than something like Debian Stable or Ubuntu LTS. All right. Yeah, he was using Intel graphics on his laptop. I don't have anything that uses Intel, so I'm not sure about Intel graphics and PyCom. All of my machines are AMD. Yeah, he was not using the crappy Nuvo drivers. Somebody was using the Nuvo drivers for their Nvidia card. That's a bad idea. Yeah, audio sounds good. Okay, great. Audio's fine. What is the book with Stallman's picture behind you? That is Free as in Freedom. Free as in Freedom. I sometimes place this book in the background. And because I named the stream tonight Free as in Freedom Friday, I figured I would put the book Free as in Freedom, written by Sam Williams. Of course, it's about the life of Richard Stallman and how he created the free software movement, of course. It's a really good book. It's historically, it's got some really neat stuff in it. So it's a great book if you're interested at all in learning about the free software movement and the creation of our operating system, GNU/Linux. This is a good book to read. Talks about his early years at MIT and how he came across the idea that all software should be free, and free as in freedom. And then the birth of the GNU project and his work with, things like Emacs and... All right. Hey, DT, what do you think about BattleEye banning people playing games on KVM? That's normal with these proprietary games because of anti-cheat. They typically ban people that are not running the game on the native operating system. Typically, they don't like you running things in Wine. They don't like you running things in virtual machines. It's just what you got to deal with. I mean, this is what Richard Stallman talks about, right? The evils of proprietary software. One of the things you got to deal with those kinds of companies. They're not always open to issues that relate to especially Linux users. Because obviously, their game, I don't know this BattleEye game, I'm assuming it doesn't run natively on Linux. So you jump through all these hoops to get it to work in a VM, and it's working perfectly in a VM. And then they detect that you're running this in a VM, you must be a hacker, you must be a cheater, and then they ban you. And then whatever money you spent on that game, you just lost that. And you really don't have any recourse. There's nothing you can do about that. A question, DT, for who are those freedoms meant? Because no matter how you slice things, someone will have limitations just because someone else has freedom. Yeah, I guess someone is always not going to have freedom. I mean, if you really want to protect people's freedoms, you do have to limit certain freedoms, right? For example, if we want everybody to have the right to live, right? The right to life. Then we have to make laws against murder. Now, we're restricting people's freedom at that point, right? We're preventing people that want to go out and commit murder from doing that. So in some ways, we're preventing freedom by saying everybody has a right to live. But that is, kind of parsing words and, that's being a little bit too nitpicky with definitions when we talk about freedom with free software. There are certain freedoms we want to protect at all cost. Now, if we have to limit people in other ways to protect those basic 4 freedoms, so be it. Hey, DT, how religiously do you follow the Free Software Foundation guidelines? And then he mentions Arch and Arctic seem fine to me, even if they aren't inherently FSF approved. Okay, so Arch is really not close to being a distro that would follow the free software movement, right? Because there is quite a bit of proprietary software in Arch. In the standard repositories, and then, of course, most everything in the AUR is proprietary software. Not most everything, but there's a lot of proprietary software, of course, in the AUR. Now, the AUR, or the Arch guys, would say that's a community repository. We're not packaging that stuff. We're just letting the community put it there. But still, Arch, like if we were doing a spectrum of 1 to 10, 1 being, completely free software foundation approved distros, and 10 being the other direction, proprietary software all day long, Arch is much closer to a 10, right? They're more like an 8.5 on that scale. Or something like Debian will be closer to the other end of the spectrum. They really try to stick to free software as much as they can in Debian. They don't get all the way to a 1. They're not a Free Software Foundation approved distro, but they're pretty close. So Arch and the various Arch-based distros, yeah, they with the exception of Parabola, because Parabola takes Arch and rips out, you know, all the non-free stuff. Yeah, Arch has closed source firmware in most cases. Yeah. Most GNU/Linux distributions are going to have closed source firmware. That's the big sticking point that prevents many of them from being Free Software Foundation approved distros. The kernel, obviously, is another one. You got to run the Linux Libre kernel. Just running the standard Linux kernel is too much non-free stuff in the kernel. Yeah, freedoms include letting other people be free, yeah. In my experience, a lot of the proprietary software goes to the AUR. Yeah, there are some proprietary programs, though, in the standard Arch repositories. They are not that staunch of supporters of the free software movement. I mean, yeah, they like free and open source software, and they want to use it. But hey, if they need to put some proprietary software in their distribution, they're not that against it, you know. Yeah, why are the Nouveau drivers so bad? Because that is not a driver that Nvidia actually helps the community make. So the Nouveau drivers are open source drivers for the Nvidia cards, but Nvidia doesn't actually give the community any help in that. They don't actually release any code or anything. So the community, in a lot of ways, is just trying to reverse engineer these drivers, or, you know, they're just making their best educated guesses in a lot of ways. That's why these drivers are bad. The Nouveau drivers are horrible, but there's not really a way to do it better. The only way that the Nouveau drivers are ever going to get better is if Nvidia actually open sources their drivers and actually just say, here's the drivers, you guys can actually have it. Now, as long as Nvidia wants to keep the real drivers, the ones that work, completely closed sourced and proprietary, and you can't see the code, I mean, there's nothing the community really can do to make those drivers better. That's why with Nvidia cards, you have to run the proprietary drivers. I was an Nvidia user for a long time, and I may still buy Nvidia cards in the future because they're really good graphics cards. But if you buy an Nvidia card, especially an expensive Nvidia card, you have to run the proprietary drivers. You just have to. The open source drivers are just not good. Like to do the kind of work I do with streaming and video editing and things like that, the Nouveau drivers, completely inappropriate. You guys that game, if you're a serious gamer, the Nouveau drivers suck at gaming. You're not going to game with the Nouveau drivers. You got to use the proprietary drivers with Nvidia, and that's unfortunate. I got a super chat there from Chris. Hey, for your freedom to continue what you like doing. Hey, appreciate that. I'm going to have a sip of my coffee. I had coffee this evening. Didn't have any beer. Don't feel like going to get any today, even though it is a Friday. I may go to the store later and pick me up a 6-pack. I don't know. Been trying to cut back. Been trying to watch the diet a little bit, cut a few calories. Here in the last month, I've really tried to not drink anything that wasn't a 0-calorie drink. So black coffee, unsweet tea, water. Pretty much it. In the last month, I probably, other than 0-calorie drinks, I bought 3 or 4 6-packs of beer in the last month. And that is it. Nothing, I haven't drank anything else. So no sodas or, no fruit juices, nothing like that. No milk. And then, the food I eat, obviously with the pandemic, sometimes you're kind of limited on the meals you can eat. Sometimes you just have to eat whatever's around. But I've been trying to do a little better. And of course, is still hitting the gym. But I would like to drop a little weight. I could stand to lose a few pounds. It's tough for me to lose weight, though. Always has been. Usually in the summer, when it gets warm and I do more stuff outside, and it's the summer now, it's really hot in Louisiana in the summer, 100 degrees every day for, 2 or 3 months in the summer. And usually, if I'm really active, I can drop 10, 15 pounds. But it seems like by the time winter rolls around, I'll put it all back on. And then next summer, I'll drop a few pounds, but I've always been one of those people, though, even, doing serious dieting and working out the way I do. I never just shed weight easily. Of course, now it's probably an age thing. I'm in my 40s where, really, you guys that are young, especially you guys that are high school, college age, and, if you're not taking your fitness seriously, you need to start. Become a member of a gym, start working out. If you're not already active, doing a sport or something, really start doing something, because I promise you, you're going to get fat and lazy for a decade or two. And then one day you're going to wake up, maybe you'll be in your mid 30s. You'll decide, you know what, I'm going to change my life, change my lifestyle, start eating right, going to the gym, and I'm going to get in shape and drop all this extra weight, try to be healthy. But when you're on the other side of 30, that becomes so much more difficult. Where when you're young, you can drop weight like that, you can put on muscle like that, where when you get older, it doesn't work that way. When you get, in your 40s, you have to work like 10 times harder than you do in your early 20s to make those changes. All right. Back to the chat. I know I missed some of the chat here. Well, if a developer wanted to create free software, he needs to limit his freedom. If he wants to develop free software, he needs to limit his freedom. Well, he has the freedom to not develop free software if he doesn't want to. So he has all the freedom he could possibly want. Nobody makes people develop free software. Nobody makes people develop proprietary software, for that matter. At least not yet. So that's completely their choice, how they want to do it. Let's see. DT, I know why you left out the installing of shortwave out of the video. Was going to give it a try, but it downloaded over 50 dependencies. It's compiling all of that and taking forever. So I don't remember when I did the video about the shortwave player, how long the installation took. Wasn't there a snap for that? I don't know. You might want to check and see how it's packaged. Because if you're compiling it, I'm assuming if you're on an Arch-based distribution, or you getting it from the AUR, or you on Gentoo, or you just building it from source on any distribution. But wasn't there? I think there was a snap for shortwave. I think that's how I got it. I don't know. It's been a while, and I haven't used it since that video. So. Why does Nvidia keep their drivers closed source? What's the compelling reasons? No real reasons, really. These days, because AMD and Intel both open source their drivers, I'm not sure what kind of competitive advantage Nvidia thinks they get by keeping their drivers closed source. All they're doing, really, is telling people that run free operating systems, GNU/Linux and the various BSDs, hey, don't buy an Nvidia card. For graphics, do AMD or Intel. Don't do Nvidia, because we're not interested. That's basically what Nvidia is telling us. Which, Linus Torvalds, right? F you, Nvidia. Thanks for the super chat from RoboNuggy. Try some green tea. It's very good for you. I'm not a big fan of green tea. I don't mind a nice cup of black tea every now and then, but green tea, I can drink it, but it's not my favorite. ADT, have you ever played an instrument? Welcome to the channel. Literally nobody is his name. You must be new. No, I've never played an instrument. Yeah, if you go back and check some of the past videos, click on the videos tab in YouTube. Go to videos. And scroll back. Let's see. How far back do we have to go? Oh, 2 weeks ago. DT playing handle on the recorder on a live stream. Yeah, check that out. There's some various other recorder stuff. There's some trombone stuff back here somewhere. I'm too lazy to find it, but you'll find it. Just search around. Do a search on the little search box here. Shortwave is a flat pack. Okay, maybe it was a flat pack I installed. That was Mr. Nobody. Appreciate that. But yeah, I don't think I installed shortwave 2 different ways, actually, now that I remember it. I think I installed the flat pack, and I think there was an AUR package. And the reason I installed it both ways is one of them didn't want to work right for me. I can't remember which one, but I installed both the AUR package and the flat pack. Yeah, it is a flat pack, and that's the one that threw you the error. Okay. Well, if you're on Arch or an Arch-based distro, try the AUR. By the way, if you're getting an error, if you have time, post a bug report. Open an issue on their GitHub or their GitLab. Might be something that they can quickly fix, especially if they're the ones packaging that flat pack. Now, sometimes you get third-party people packaging the flat pack. But sometimes it's actually the main developers of that project packaging it. If that's the case, if it's a simple fix, they can push a fix out, within a few minutes or a few hours sometimes. Let's see. DT, why have you only played flute the last times and not the trombone? That's a small space. A lot of times when I play the recorder, it's a spur-of-the-moment thing. I don't really have to play with the microphones and the gain and everything and try to get that right. And we're dealing with extremely different volume levels, me playing the recorder and me playing the trombone. The other thing is the trombone is much more of a physical instrument to play. Like if you haven't played in a while, you can't just pick it up and boom, there you go. Right? You have to kind of get back into shape. There's muscles involved, facial muscles. And once you get out of shape, you got to ease your way back in. You got to play for a little bit every day for a couple of weeks to kind of get everything back. Yeah, you can use Teams on Linux. Yeah, but why would anybody want to use Teams? I guess some people have to. Some people have to use Zoom and Teams and Skype and all that now, especially because of the pandemic. A lot of schools are requiring that stuff. Some workplaces are also requiring that stuff. Which, getting back to Free as in Freedom, the Free Software Foundation, you guys are not a member of the Free Software Foundation. I get newsletters from them all the time because I'm a member. And Free Software Foundation, the 4 freedoms. Hey, we should talk about the 4 freedoms. Those of you that are not exactly sure what those 4 freedoms are. Freedom 0, the freedom to run the program as you wish for any purpose. Freedom 1, the freedom to study how the program works. So the ability to look at the source code. Freedom 2, the freedom to redistribute the copies so you can help others. So you should be able to give anybody this program, right? You get it, and then you can share it with the next person. Freedom 3, the freedom to distribute copies of the modified version of that work. So I can modify the code, and then after I modify the code, I can share that modified version of the program with everyone. Those are the 4 freedoms. But getting back to the Free Software Foundation, this is actually GNU.org. I am a member of the Free Software Foundation, though. Let me go to fsf.org. I don't know if I'm logged into anything. No, I'm not logged in at the moment. But in their news, seems like they've got a lot of campaigns going against people not being allowed to use free, as in freedom respecting video conferencing software. Let me zoom in here a little bit in Firefox. So, they're trying to raise awareness about the dangers of Zoom and Skype and Teams and Discord and things like that. And they're telling people about free alternatives such as Jitsi and other things. And they even have petitions that they're asking Free Software Foundation members to sign. They're trying to get, signatures together to let some of, these school districts and businesses know that these programs are serious security and privacy invading pieces of software. They're basically unethical pieces of software, and people should not be forced to use those particular pieces of software. Because, and it goes into detail why things like Zoom and Discord and things like that could be severely damaging to people because of the security and privacy issues. Right? You're putting your students at risk or your employees at risk by making them use those things. That's the argument. All right. Hey DT, will you ever get a DT room house tour? Well, probably not a house tour because there's nothing to see. I mean, it's a normal house that I live in. There's nothing, kitchen and a living room and but yeah, that's strange. Why there's nothing interesting in the rest of the house as far as Linux related. As far as this room, you see most of the room. This room I am in is seriously about 8 feet by 8 feet, and it's like an 8 by 8 square. It's an extremely small room. So what you're seeing in the frame right now is actually one half of the room. The edge of my desk takes, that's about a 4-foot desk right here. That's that half, and you're seeing all the way right past the audio server rack. I mean, there's a door. Like if I move the camera, there's a door leading out to the hallway. That's it. I mean, the other half of the room is basically another half like this. I've got a dresser drawer. There is a shelf over here that's got some equipment on it, computer stuff and boxes, from things I've purchased. Lights. I've got a couple of different lights on that side of the room, obviously to illuminate the videos I record. So you've already seen everything that was interesting. There's nothing really. Like, it sounds cooler than it would be. Like, this is not Linus Tech Tips Studio, right? Or Marcus Brownlee, or you're going to go into a giant room and you got all these computerized widgets, about 18 different cameras everywhere and lights and what you see basically in the wide shot here. That's it. That's the room. Now, at some point, I do need to go in more detail, maybe about some of the software I use and about making the videos. I'd like to do some more detailed stuff about OBS and about Kdenlive and about GIMP and about Audacity. So we may get into some of that. The hardware stuff, though, because I've got so much, especially the audio software. A lot of people do so much of their audio with software, processing through software. Because I've got that audio rack behind me. How do I start recording? I come into this room and there is a power conditioner strip on that audio rack that everything else on the audio rack is plugged into. I turn the power button on that and the audio rack, everything lights up. When I'm done recording, I turn the power button off and it kills everything on that audio rack. That is all I do. I turn the camera on. The camera, is powered up separately. Other than that, power up the camera. And I turn on one of the LED lamps that I have in here. Have you ever tried to compare Linux with FreeBSD? I haven't. I'm not a sysadmin, so I really can't speak far as Linux and FreeBSD on servers. On the desktop, being a desktop user, yeah, obviously Linux is going to be able to do what I want to do. Well, FreeBSD would have some issues. So no, I can. Probably the kind of comparison you want is you probably want a system admin to tell you a little bit about those differences. Yeah, Cat Daddy says, I'd enjoy hearing about the software used for DT streaming. Yeah, matter of fact, we may do that soon. I mentioned, may talk about things like OBS and GIMP and Audacity and Kdenlive. Kdenlive would be a great one to do. I don't think I've ever made a video. I think today's stream is like video 755. I've never made a video about Kdenlive. And Kdenlive, that's what I used to edit all my videos. So I've used Kdenlive at least 755 times. I know a little bit about it, and I can show you guys, especially you guys that are new to Kdenlive, a little bit how that works. It might be something I do this weekend, maybe tomorrow or maybe Sunday. I don't know. I think that would be a fun video. I've done some videos on OBS in the past, but I could get a little deeper into how OBS works, which is the software that I'm using right now to stream. GIMP, I've done a little bit of stuff with GIMP, but GIMP, you can get really deep into GIMP as well. I could do more stuff with GIMP. I did a video on Audacity a while back, about a year ago, where I didn't go terribly deep into Audacity, but it was a good video. Those of you that are just getting into doing this kind of stuff, YouTube or podcasting or whatever, anything where you need to record the spoken voice especially, and you're not sure how to clean up your audio, go check out my video about cleaning up your audio in Audacity. I just cover, the basics, but the basics do so much for you. Things like noise reduction, compression, normalization, things like that. I actually hardly ever do any of that stuff anymore. It's rare that I open Audacity anymore to clean up any kind of audio, because I just do everything with all the equipment behind me, all that stuff. That kind of solves the problem. I don't have to worry about post-production, post-processing that audio in some way, because it's all done in production, right? It's all done on the fly as I'm speaking now. I don't have to go back and do any kind of compression or normalization or EQ or all of that. Once you have all the hardware set up, we're done. I don't have to play with, those settings in OBS that take care of the various, compression and noise gate, noise suppression, all that. I used to have to fight with that stuff depending on what mics I was using and where I was sitting in the room. Now, there is a downside to using hardware. The hardware is expensive, right? That rack and the equipment that's in it, that's probably $2,000 invested in that rack and all the equipment sitting on it. So it's a big initial investment. Now, once you have that, is it a time saver? Hell yeah. Right? Think about how much time, especially if you guys in the chat right now, I know we got some folks in the chat that also done YouTube videos. How much time do you guys spend in post, working on your audio, cutting out noise and doing normalization and things like that? I don't have to do that. And when you make as many videos as I make, that's a real time saver. It's worth the money at that point. Yeah, also, hardware has no undo. Well, but usually you don't have to worry too much about the hardware. Like once I have the settings on that, where I want, I never play with it, right? As long as I don't go messing with the knobs and the sliders over there, it should all be the same. Typically, when I have audio issues, like if I make a video, and it happens every now and then, I'll make a video where noticeably something's changed with my audio. Maybe it's too loud, so it's getting distorted, you know, it's peaking, or maybe it's really soft. Like I had an issue about a month ago where I made a couple of videos in a row where I noticed the audio was really soft compared to all the videos I had been making. I hadn't touched the knobs or anything on all of that. It wasn't a hardware issue. It had nothing to do with hardware. Pulse Audio. Pulse Audio decided to drop the input level of this microphone for no reason. Wasn't anything I did. I'd never opened up Pavu control or anything like that. But sometimes Pulse Audio just decides to change the levels. I don't know why. That's always been my experience with Pulse Audio. Before that equipment, you know, with various microphones I've used since starting the channel, is sometimes Pulse Audio just changes things on its own. Like there's a gremlin in the system. Back to the chat for a second. All right, yeah, I know I missed some of you guys on your questions. I do apologize. I'll try to catch back up on some of it. Some of it we'll just have to let go. There's too many of you guys here this evening. Hey DT, would you consider using Go for your scripts for scriptable programs like BSPWM, Herbstluft, or DZen? Would I? No, because I don't know Go. Would you use what you want to use? The great thing with scripts like the BSPWM config and Herbstluft config is you can write them in whatever language you're comfortable with. So use what you know. Most people use either shell scripting or Python on Linux, you know, with BSPWM and Herbstluft, because most people that use Linux know shell scripting and Python. But there's nothing to say you can't write those configs in Go or anything else. You know, it's whatever you're comfortable with. And if you wanted to write it in C or something crazy, yeah, you know, I wouldn't do that because they're such simple configs anyway. It's like 200 lines probably max for that config. Just write it in shell scripting. But I'm guessing you're asking that is because you're maybe learning Go and you're thinking that would be a good exercise, you writing something in Go. Go for it. Oh. Yeah, Keep It Techie is in the chat. How you doing, Josh? He says, yeah, DT helped me out with that Audacity video. Yeah, I had to learn all that stuff too. That was probably the hardest thing when you start YouTube or podcasting or radio or whatever it is you're doing, is a lot of people just assume, well, I'm going to buy a mic, or maybe not even buy a mic. I'll just use whatever crappy mic, $10 mic I have laying around. I'm going to plug it in and everything's going to sound right. And it doesn't. It sounds horrible. It sounds so bad. The cheap mics especially, but even, you know, an expensive mic like this mic here, you know, it's not a cheap mic, but if I just plugged it in, you know, really didn't run it through any kind of EQ or compression, it's going to have a ton of noise. Actually, forget the noise, without serious gain, a lot of gain, a ton of gain, you wouldn't even hear the mic, you know, because it's a dynamic mic. There's a lot of things to this audio stuff, much more than I know. I'm still an audio noob. I haven't really dived that deep into this stuff. I just, you know, have learned enough to get by. All right. Yeah, DT, today I choose between Photoshop and GIMP to do some effects on a logo. I really prefer the GIMP. Yeah, I prefer the GIMP too, because I've never used Photoshop, so I don't know anything about Photoshop. I'm sure it's a great program. It's proprietary, and I've never used it, so I don't know anything about Photoshop. If you showed me a screenshot of it, I wouldn't know what Photoshop looks like, unfortunately. I really can't compare them. All right, DT, do you think it's possible to have an open source AAA title game just like the current ones? An open source AAA title game. It's possible, but the gaming companies, the companies that invest, you know, a ton of money making the AAA titles, they're not interested. That entire industry has always been closed source proprietary software until somebody is brave enough to start putting out the AAA titles as open source projects. You know, once somebody does that and maybe they're successful at that, maybe other people will start. But, you know, you got to get that first person, that first company out there. Right now, that's never been something that the gaming industry is interested in. I doubt they care about free and open source software at all. You know, that's not what they do. You know, they're worried about getting their proprietary software on these proprietary platforms like Steam, and you know, they want to put as much crap like DRM into the system as possible. You know, that's just what you deal with gaming right now, unfortunately. Wish we had more free and open source games. I mean, we've got some, and we've got some good ones, but not nearly enough. Yeah, effing Pulse Audio, LOL. Yeah, Pulse Audio is interesting, to say the least. It keeps you on your toes, Pulse Audio. Keeps you guessing. Alright, what is your opinion on suckless people stating GNU is bloated, and the only viable option is MUSL and libc implementation? Yeah, okay. So the MUSL versus glibc thing with the suckless guys, I mean, that's their opinion. The suckless guys want software in as few lines of code as possible. So yeah, I mean, that fits with their philosophy. As far as, do I agree with the suckless philosophy? No, I don't. Lines of code aren't that important. The number of lines of code. Grab a water here. I mean, it's important to not have overly bloated programs for security reasons. Lower attack vector and, you know, things like that. I mean, there's reasons why you don't want just a lot of extra unnecessary code. You don't want feature creep in your programs. But with the suckless guys, it's, you know, they have these arbitrary line limits. You know, like DWM can never be more than 2,000 lines of C. Well, why? Where did you come up with that number? Why is it 2,000 lines of code? And if you wanted to, couldn't you just minify everything and make DWM like all the code one line of code? Like, it's so stupid. You know, those lines of code, you know, as far as the number, it means nothing. It's a meaningless stat. So, but as far as, yeah, the suckless guys not liking a lot of the GNU programs, yes, of course they don't, right? I'm sure if you're a suckless fanboy, you hate Emacs, right? That'd be the last thing you ever run. You're not going to like Bash. You're not going to like, you know, a lot of stuff. Even their init system, Shepherd, is probably too bloated. You know, they're going to want to run it, which is only like 150 lines of code or something crazy. All right, I missed a lot of the chat on that little rant about suckless. Okay, DT, is it the correct way to pronounce Apple's operating system the Mac OS, or is it just Mac OS? I don't think it really matters whether you call it the Mac OS or Mac OS to me. I just call it Mac OS. I mean, these days, what is their operating system? It's Mac OS 10. Or on the mobile devices, it's iOS. I don't know anything about the modern Mac operating systems, though. I have never used them. The last time I used Macs was the early 1990s. And the Mac OS back then is nothing like what it is now. It was a completely different operating system, not even remotely the same thing. So I have absolutely no comments. As well, people often ask me why I never compare like Linux and Mac OS 10, and that's because I don't know anything about modern Macs. When I used them 30 years ago, again, it was a completely different company, completely different operating system. All right. Yeah, Peter says, yeah, there's a lot wrong with the gaming industry, but you can't blame them for not open sourcing it. It is expensive to make games. Blame them for the DRM and DLCs and season passes. Oh, yes. Yeah, I definitely want to blame them for all of that. The problem, you know, you can open source the games. I mean, you could still charge people money. So many games now are online anyway. If you wanted to use the official servers for the game, you know, charge people for that. I don't know. That you could still monetize a game and still have it open source. Especially these days. I think it would have actually been tougher in the early days of gaming, computer gaming, when nothing was really online. There wasn't online gaming. Everybody had to have a physical disk or a floppy with the game on it. It'd have been tough to do open source gaming, you know, back in the 1980s, for example. That could have never worked. Of course, the open source movement didn't even exist back then. Free software movement existed back then. Thank you, Richard. All right. Yeah, MUSL is lightweight, but if you're writing with localization requirements, it doesn't handle it. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason nobody really uses MUSL. Other than Void, and even Void knows a lot of people can't make MUSL work. So they also have ISOs with glibc. And that's the one you want to use. Unless you have a real reason why you want to use MUSL, you want to grab the ISOs that have glibc. Just saying. Right? Yeah, you should do a video trying to live in a purely suckless system. Well, suckless, unless they make an operating system, how could I live in a purely suckless system? I mean, I've lived in DWM and I've used ST as my terminal and dmenu and the Surf browser and tabbed, and I've used all the suckless programs that are worth using. And I'm a fan of most of them. Like, most of them are really good. So I've probably done as much with suckless as most people would, unless they're a suckless developer. I mean, I was doing stuff with suckless 2.5 years ago on the channel. I mean, I was into this stuff a long time ago. So check some of the older videos if you're new to the channel. I've done plenty of stuff with DWM and ST and dmenu and all of that Surf. Nobody uses the Surf browser, and I've done a few videos on Surf. I tried to make Surf work. I went the extra mile trying to do Surf. I still have it installed on my system. It's a tough one to use as your daily web browser, though. Some talk about C# in the chat. Big Pod must have started that. He's the C# guy. All right. Why should modern games even be open when they're mostly using public technology like Unity and Unreal? Yeah. I think we'll get there eventually with games. Really, games, that particular segment, that industry as far as software, is kind of the last nut to crack, right? That's the only industry where they really have no concept about free software and open source software. Like, they don't care. They're not. There's not even they may have never even heard about it in some cases. A lot of the people at the top of certain companies, gaming companies. But we'll get there soon. Kind of like, we were never going to get there with Microsoft, right? Microsoft was always this evil proprietary corporation that, was just literally the devil, right? Look how that's changed, Eventually, when they see other people putting out competing software that is free software and making it work and people liking it, and, it's going to be the same with gaming eventually. Somebody will do a open gaming platform to compete with Steam at some point. People will start putting out open source games on that open platform, and once somebody makes it work and they see that people actually crave that sort of thing, then other people will jump on board. How's the experience with GNU Geeks going? Did you get the wireless chip sorted for the ThinkPad? No, I'm going to have to buy a new chip for the ThinkPad. I haven't ordered one yet. That ThinkPad behind me that's running C Matrix, yeah, that's GNU Geeks there. But no, I haven't got wireless working in that yet. I'll have to buy a chip. Or what I may do is buy another laptop just for geeks. I'll make sure that it actually supports these FSF approved distros. Thanks for the super chat there from Sinkwich. You've got an audio rack. Have you considered getting a rack for Linux servers, Proxmox, and etc.? eBay has great deals on old servers. Move to the Mosh plus Tmux world. All right. Yeah, I mean, it's a server rack. It's a standard 19-inch rack. So could I put a server on it? Yes, I could get just a traditional, blade server or whatever and stick it on the rack. Yes, and I could do something like a Proxmox server or a NAS or, whatever it is. Yeah, I could get that on the rack. So the question is, could I? Yes. Will I? I don't know. Possibly. I'm not against the idea. The thing with that sort of stuff, though, it's a little bit different than the audio equipment. As far as this stuff doesn't draw power. And it draws power, but not much, right? And it's only powered up when I'm doing this. I've got an on-off switch that kills the whole thing. With computers, they draw so much more power. A lot of power. So electric bill is going to go through the roof. For me adding a computer to that server rack that maybe I don't necessarily need or won't use that often, that's the problem. Is adding a Proxmox server sounds kind of cool. Do I really need it? Would I use it that much? Probably not. I could get a cheap server, though, but long term, the power cost would be a problem if I had it running all the time. Yeah, DT underestimates how popular single-player games are. Open source that and you won't get much money. They need to make that to make the games. Well, pretty much most of the games I play are single player, especially the open source games I play. I play a lot of single player 0AD and Battle for Westnoth. Xenotic, I'll do with you guys because the first person shooter, obviously, that's much more fun playing against real people than the AI. But the strategy games, I don't mind playing against the computers. Catch back up on some of the chat here, guys. DT, if you had to recommend a laptop, which one would it be for open source drivers? There aren't many options, and I don't want to buy a MacBook Air to install Linux on it. I wouldn't install a Mac to put Linux on it. That sounds like a bad idea, especially the newer Macs, because of the right to repair issues that some of those machines may have. You want an open laptop. I've been thinking about an open laptop myself, something that would be compatible. What I'm thinking about doing is buying one of the Pine books. One of the cheap Pine books. It's a $200 laptop, but it's core booted. It runs Pure OS. Is it Pure OS that's on the Pine book? No, Pure OS is what's on, obviously, the Purism laptops. I think it's also on the Pine book. Anyway, that's going to be, if it runs Pure OS, Free Software Foundation approved distribution, it's core booted, so you ain't got to worry about the non-free booting. That might work. It's not a very powerful machine, though. It's a cheaper laptop, but that's kind of what Linux needed. We needed a cheap machine, because if you wanted something higher end, we kind of had that covered. The System 76 laptops. I don't know if the system, you could maybe email the System 76 guys if you want something a little beefier. You want like a desktop replacement kind of laptop. Maybe some of the System 76 machines would be appropriate for a 100% free, as in freedom, distribution. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if the System 76 machines didn't work, though. Or, you could always just buy an old ThinkPad. ThinkPads are so cheap. People sell them for $100 on eBay. ThinkPads that are not that old and they're not beat up and they still work. Maybe you got to put a new drive in it. But other than that, really, the only thing you might have an issue, I've got an issue with the Wi-Fi chip in mine. I can probably replace the Wi-Fi chip in that thing for $30. That may be a way to go. Really depends on what kind of money you want to spend and what you're planning on doing with that laptop. Yeah, the Pinebook Pro is rad. I'm probably going to pick one up. If I pick one up, of course, I'll do a video about it on the channel. I'll, take a look at it in its pre-configured form before I wipe out the OS and put something like GNU Geeks on it, or whatever it is I go with. DT, have you ever used Chrome OS? Absolutely not. DT only uses free and open source operating systems, Mike. Well, other than the phone. This is an Android phone. But hey, it's a phone. What can I do? I mean, it was Android or iOS, lesser of the two evils? Well, probably not, actually. Google versus Apple. Apple probably would be the lesser of those two evils, but I do like the Samsung phones. It's good hardware. And on my phone, I'm just not brave enough to flash it, wipe out Android and try to go with a free option. My phone is a little too important. Yeah, Adam says, thank you, DT, for the awesome xmonad.files. Glad it could help. I see my xmonad.files everywhere. I see those xmonad.files all over the internet. Every time somebody's posting screenshots, I'm like, hey, that's my xmobar. Or when people post their configs, sharing their xmonad.files, and I open it up, it's an exact replica of my .files. I'm really happy that so many people have gotten into xmonad by using those .files. And that's the whole point of me doing the videos and then sharing my configs, is getting you guys to try some of those window managers that maybe you wouldn't have tried if you had to write your config from scratch. I did it to save you the headache, basically. Yeah, Peter says, Big Pod, saying C# is better than Java is like saying that COVID is better than the plague. It is true, but it doesn't say much. C# and Java. Wow. Can we talk about better languages? I mean, really? Can we talk about Python and JavaScript? Because C# and Java. Wow. Yeah. DT, Chris Titus has put Linux on his phones. I'm sure, I'm not a phone guy, though. I don't really use my phone. So I only use my phone to make phone calls. It's basically, especially when I was working. It's just people have a way to get in touch with me. I don't actually do anything important on this phone. It's not my computer, right? Maybe it's an age thing. I actually wouldn't, I think I've mentioned this before. I actually wouldn't have a phone if it wasn't for work. Like if it wasn't for, nowadays especially, you get a job as a manager or supervisor somewhere, they gotta have a way to get in touch with you 24/7, 365. So you have to have a phone. But if that wasn't the case, I wouldn't have a phone. I don't think these are healthy. Not necessarily just the people that sit around and tweet all day on the phones. Yeah, that's not healthy. But I don't think people being able to get in touch with you anytime they feel like it, I don't think that's a good idea. I remember what the world was like before cell phones. And it was a much better place. I could go get in a car and drive, go somewhere. Nobody would know where I was going. Nobody could get in touch with me. That was normal. That's what everybody did. Now the idea that you're ever somewhere and nobody knows where you're at and nobody can get in touch with you, that's so foreign to people today. But yeah, I long for the day, for the days before the cell phone. Yeah, people keep asking about Bedrock Linux. I've had so many questions about that. It's not a distribution that interests me at all, because I don't understand why I would need Bedrock Linux. It's not really a distribution. It's a strange thing that allows you to use different package managers from different distributions. Like I can use apt and DNF and Pacman all on one system. Why would I want to do that? I don't see the point, especially as an Arch user. I don't need anything that's in the Debian repositories if I'm on Arch. I've never, wow, that's not packaged for Arch, but it's packaged for Debian. That never happens. Yeah, so Bedrock, I mean, could I take a look at it? I guess I could, but it wouldn't be a positive review because I don't understand I don't understand why anybody even thought that was a good idea. Sometimes you ask me to review things, and I know it's not going to be a great review. And I try to help you guys out by not reviewing that stuff, like the Instant OS thing. I knew that was not going to be a good review, but you guys kept bugging me. And then when you got the review, hey, you weren't fair to that distribution. Well, I went into it knowing I was going to hate it. I mean, it's this whiz-bang tiling window manager with no configuration. What did you expect? And then, I sent you guys to check out the Instant OS Devs channel to, because he's going to make real videos on it and he's going to be excited and it's going to be great for you guys that are excited about Instant Window Manager. I'm not that guy, though. So Bedrock's going to be the same way. I'm not going to do it. There's no reason for me to do it. Yeah, I agree with DT. Having a smartphone is not healthy. Yeah. Yeah, I don't do anything with phones, too. People ask me about the phone operating systems and how, flash the phone and put Lineage on your phone and do this and that with the phone. I don't play with my phone at all. I don't tinker. I don't do anything. I don't even install and remove apps on my phone. Like, I'm not one of those phone users. I'm just not. I have it so people that need to call me can call me. That's basically all I do on that phone. Occasionally I'll make phone calls and occasionally I'll send a text. That's about it. I do have a web browser, of course, on the phone. I don't sit around and browse the internet on the phone. I don't trust it. I would never make a payment with my phone. The things most people now do with their phones, I don't do. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do banking on my phone or anything like that. Absolutely not. The web browser on my phone, if I needed to look something up, typically, if I wanted to do a Google search or Wikipedia search, I have the Brave browser installed on this phone because I won't use Google Chrome on this phone. I don't trust Google Chrome on any device. So. Yeah, have you ever reviewed Gopherhole Linux? That's one weird distro. I don't think I have. I've made so many videos, but I don't think I've ever reviewed Gopherhole. I'd have to look that up. It sounds familiar. occasionally, you know, I actually have to go back and search myself. I probably reviewed, you know, 200, 300 different distributions at one point or another on the channel. No, I don't have anything that comes up when I search for Gobo, so I don't think I have taken a look at that one. Yeah, and Richard says, I urge you all to visit the Free Software Foundation as well as GNU's websites. That's why you're named Richard. Right? Wrong last name, but the right first name. Thanks, Richard, for pointing people to the Free Software Foundation and GNU.org as well. Yeah, and then GNU Ninja was talking to somebody about you have the illusion of muting your phone. Yeah, I mean, I assume that this is a bugging device that's listening all the time. All right. That should be any microphone. So any laptop, any cell phone, any actual microphone, whether the thing's powered up or whatever it is you're doing, just assume it's always listening. Yeah, the Vim config video does not make sense. I'm not sure who you were, if you're talking about my Vim config videos, you didn't tell me which one, and you didn't tell me what doesn't make sense. Did you run through the Vim tutor? Also, depending on which one of my Vim videos you started with, not all of them maybe are designed for an absolute beginner if you're starting with Vim. Some may be a little easier to get into than others. Yeah, Ben is in the chat. He says, my phone, I use a lot, and I'm so used to the Apple ecosystem, I can't see myself going somewhere else. I'm not an elitist or software purist, to be honest, so I don't give a rat's behind what I use. Yeah. And then Santiago says, greetings from Colombia. Welcome, Santiago. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, Peter says, I seriously hate having anything in my pockets more than one key. Yeah. I don't really carry anything in my pockets either other than my car keys. That's it. DT, thank you for promoting free software. Absolutely. We all should be doing that. Sadly, not enough people are. Even talking about the Linux YouTube community, not enough people really direct people to organizations like the Free Software Foundation and the Electronic Frontier Foundation. How many people actually talk about GNU the way I did on that video a couple of weeks back explaining the differences between GNU and Linux, right? And why the good folks that worked on GNU software deserve a lot more credit than people are wanting to give to them. People don't talk about that. And I don't know why, especially in this community. All right. This made me really want to buy a Pine phone right now. Yeah, that may be what I end up. If I like the Pine book, you know, I'll buy the laptop. I may eventually try to get a Pine phone. That could be interesting as well. Matter of fact, there was a phone company that was wanting to send me a phone to test out, a Linuxy kind of phone. Can't remember who it was recently. I might take them up on the offer and take a look at their device. Yeah, why is GNOME bad? I think it is the best desktop environment, says Jose. Well, I don't know whether it's the best desktop environment or not is just your opinion, right? You like it, great. Some people are going to hate it. Yeah, it's just the way it is with anything. As far as why GNOME as the GNOME project is bad, it's because it's run by a bunch of angry, freedom-hating social justice warriors that want to politicize everything. That's why the GNOME project's bad. Now, the GNOME desktop environment, why is it bad? Well, again, that's just preference. So, yes, I know. I went a little too far in describing the GNOME project there, but I think they deserve it with that ridiculous code of conduct that they have. And then the responses that they've gotten or that they've given about my video, calling them out for that ridiculous code of conduct. They basically come out defending themselves. There's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, whatever. And then some of the responses they had were just way over the top, nasty, racist responses. And these were people that actually are involved with the GNOME project. And they're moderators on r/GNOME, that particular subreddit, the official GNOME subreddit. Just some nasty people. Yeah. So I have no love for the GNOME project. Oh my goodness, there's a debate about whether Windows sucks or not. I'm going to leave that alone. We really shouldn't be talking about Microsoft Windows on a live stream, though, that is titled Free as in Freedom Friday. If I do it like a proprietary Monday, we might talk about Windows, but for now, let's stick to the free operating systems. DT, do you prefer KDE? Not especially, no. I don't actually prefer any desktop environment. So, KDE, could I use it? Yeah, I could use it. Do I like it? No, not really. Again, it's preference, though. It's not my kind of thing. I like tiling window managers. I like things with extreme customization and being able to make my own desktop environment. Hey DT, what's your educational background? Love from India. Have you given much knowledge of, you have given much knowledge of Linux to me. My educational background, I don't have a computer science degree. I have never worked in a computer related field. I'm not a programmer, not a sysadmin, none of that. My degrees are all in music. So I did go to college. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in music performance. Worked on a PhD for a little while in music, never completed it. At this point, I'm not really interested in finishing that PhD. It's been years since I've worked on it. Ben says, I play a lot of Star Wars games. That's just me. Star Wars, huh? I always pictured Ben as more of a Star Trek fan. Everybody falls into one of two camps. You're either a Star Wars guy or you're a Star Trek fan. For me, I'm a Trekkie. Love me some Star Trek. The original series, great. Love it. The new generation, that's okay. Deep Space Nine was fantastic. Voyager, okay, we'll pretend like Voyager didn't exist. We'll just skip over Voyager. Enterprise wasn't bad, right? Of course, the films, all the Star Trek films. They've never made a bad Star Trek film. Not a single one. GNOME is ugly. I detest it. That was from Adam. Vanilla GNOME is definitely ugly. If you install GNOME on Arch, you're right, or Vanilla GNOME on Fedora's GNOME is not a good looking GNOME, right? Not everybody does a good GNOME. GNOME on something like Ubuntu or on Manjaro looks a little better. Still may not be the prettiest desktop, but it looks a little better than just plain vanilla GNOME. Somebody says, DT already made a video. What did I make a video on? What's your favorite distro window manager? I don't. I hop all the time anyway. As far as favorite distros, there's no real difference between all the distros. For what I do, I mean, I don't use desktop environments. So once you're under the hood, it's all the same. It's the command line, all the core utils, and all, it's the same on every distro. So they don't really matter that much to somebody like me. I can use any distro. Favorite window managers? I can make them all work, and I have at one point or another made them all work. Some of the ones that I keep coming back to all the time, I really love Qtile, I really love Xmonad, I really love the awesome window manager. OpenBox for a floating window manager. Even though I don't do floating window managers that often, when I do log into an OpenBox distro or my own OpenBox configs here on any of my machines, OpenBox is still comfy. But I can make anything work. I mean, you could give me anything and I could make it happen. Hey DT, have you ever tried out OpenBSD? No, because I'm a desktop guy, right? Yeah, and I'm not a sysadmin. I don't work with servers. This is all just me at home as a hobby, so. Favorite package manager? I don't really care about package managers, to be honest, as far as apt and DNF and Pacman and Emerge. Yeah, any of them. Yeah, do they install the software I want? Do they remove the software I don't want? Yeah, if they all do that. So, yeah, no favorite package manager either. And then, of course, you got the distro-agnostic package managers, Snaps, Flatpaks. I mean, the various programming language-specific package managers like Pip and Cargo and Gem and Cabal and, all of that stuff. Yeah, I just install whatever I need from wherever I can get it. Would you try living in a TTY? I could live in a TTY, but I can't do YouTube videos in a TTY because I can't do video in a TTY. So that would be a no-go. If I didn't have the YouTube channel, could I actually just stick in a TTY and be happy? I probably could. I think I'd be okay with that. Obviously doing what I do here, making videos on YouTube and on library, and you got to have Xorg running. Have you ever used Xorg with TWM and Xclock? Yes, I've used Tom's window manager before. It's horrible. Just wanted to let you know. It makes GNOME look good. Tom's window manager. It's bad. Thanks for the super chat there from Lex. He says, "Hey DT, I appreciate the work you do. Love the thumbnail, by the way, being Scottish myself." Yeah, I wanted something that reflected freedom. And I thought Mel Gibson and Braveheart, that reflected freedom. What I thought about doing with a thumbnail, and it wouldn't have been that hard for me to take a picture and doing this, but what I thought about doing is doing a split, two different pictures here, having Mel do the freedom screen, and then taking a picture of me doing the same thing, on the other end, facing him, like almost a mirror image of DT and Mel showing off, or facing off. I was like, yeah, let's not get too cute with a thumbnail. Right. That's a little too cheesy. Hey DT, how many instruments do you play? I play all the brass instruments. I play any brass instrument. Piano, pretty good on them. I mean, I can get around on the piano. Do you prefer source or binaries? Binaries all the way. Absolutely. I've always been, I've told you guys this is one of the things I've, since starting the channel, everybody wants to see, hey man, why don't you run Gentoo? And people, I guess they think Gentoo is some hard distribution to run. It's not. The installation takes a little time. Maybe it takes a couple hours, but you get through the installation. Gentoo is just like any other Linux distribution. The only thing is, when you update your system, it takes forever because it's compiling everything. And I don't want that. There's no point in that, right? Not for somebody like me. I just want binaries. It's a little bit different with something like GNU Geeks, which is also source-based, and it takes forever too. But it's a different kind of distribution because of the properties of it, the reproducible builds and the fact that you can write that config. If I was managing like a network of computers, something like GNU Geeks would be interesting. Like if you had to do multiple installs and you wanted everything configured the exact same way, you write your own config and GNU Guile, then you theoretically should be able to get multiple installations exactly the same. A DT, Afterstep, and FVWM2 were nice. I have looked at FVWM. It's not a bad window manager. I actually think I took a look at it on the channel once. It's okay. Basically, it's like a clone of Windows 95, Windows 98. It kind of has that kind of look and feel to me. Hey, DT, do you believe i3 is kind of limited when compared with other window managers? It is kind of limited in the way it's configured, yeah. Now, it's not necessarily limited. I mean, if you could hack on the source code, which I think some of the source code, isn't it written in C? I think it's written in C, or maybe it's written in C++, I'm not sure. Like, if you could get in there and edit the actual source code, then, I mean, any window manager can be anything to you. But most people, all they are presented with and that they can hack on is a config file. And i3's config file is severely limiting because it's not written in an actual programming language. It's not written in C. It's written in this syntax that i3 invented. There's only so much you can do with it. Because, again, it's not a real programming language that config file is written in. Or when you hack on a config file that's written in a real programming language like Qtile, you open up the config.py and it's written in Python. Whatever you can imagine in Python, you can make happen in that file. Or Xmonad's config file written in Haskell. Whatever you can make happen with Haskell, you can make happen in that Xmonad config. All right. I lost some of the chat here. Some of you guys look like you had interesting questions too. Let me see if I can find my spot. Please play brass on the channel. Yeah, I need to pull out the trombone again soon. It's been a while. Favorite init system? Don't care. They all do the same thing. And I've run all of them at some point. And of course, I've been a Linux user prior to systemd, right? So I've used plenty of distros that ran sysvinit. And the Ubuntu-based distros, when they were all running Upstart, obviously systemd is the distro of choice on so many distros now. I've used OpenRC and run it on various distros. GNU Geeks running behind me uses GNU Shepherd as the init system. They all boot up, right? They all can start services, I'm not a system admin, so I don't play around with an init system that often. How often do you really need to play with some kind of init script as a desktop user? Almost never. So I'm not the right person to ask about init systems. They just don't matter to somebody like me. I think it's weird so many people actually care. Because I think a lot of the people that get into, especially the system D debates, they're very much like me. They're not playing with the init system anyway. They're not playing with all the system D stuff anyway. They're probably not even using 90% of system D's stuff. They're not using system D timers. They're still using cron jobs. You're not using system D boot. You're not using all of that stuff. But they love talking bad about that stuff. I'm not going to trash stuff that I don't even use. And really, you don't want to trash stuff that you're not forced to use, because the way some people trash systemd, a lot of their arguments are, it's being forced on me. I've never had somebody force systemd on me. I don't even know what that means. Every operating system I've ever installed, I did of my own free will. Nobody ever made me install that operating system. Hey DT, do you consider the GNU core utils the best? Sure, why not? Haven't really gotten into the alternatives. I mean, I used distros that did use those alternatives, other operating systems that use some of the alternatives to the GNU utils. Are they better or are they worse? I don't know. But here in GNU/Linux, most distributions are going to use the GNU core utils. I'm comfortable with them. I've never thought, man, I really wish the GNU core utils weren't here. I've never thought that. By the way, the sousaphone is not a phone brand. That's right. It is basically a marching tuba. The sousaphone. Really bad sounding tuba. I know somebody in the chat right now probably marched in their high school band and they were a sousaphone player, and they're going to thumbs down the video now for me saying the sousaphone sounds bad. But an actual tuba, right? It sits in your lap upright. It's a beautiful instrument. The tuba is. The sousaphone, not so much. And then you get those really cheap bands that send people out there with the plastic sousaphones. Oh. All right, I got a couple of super chats here. Mira Aurora says, I love how I can get rid of all my Nvidia video tearing by simply adding 2 lines to /etsy/profile.d/kwin.sh and not have to use or force composition pipeline. Okay. KDE has become my favorite desktop environment. Oh, that's interesting that you got rid of your tearing. Not that you can't, but a lot of people complain, actually. That's probably one of the biggest complaints with KDE Plasma, is sometimes you really have to play with the Nvidia settings to prevent all that screen tearing. And I'm glad you got your problems fixed, but you shouldn't have to do that. It would be nice if all of that worked out of the box. For a big, heavy, bloated desktop environment, they probably should try to make that stuff work for you. Because that's kind of what these big desktop environments are anyway, right? They're trying to do everything for you anyway. And that seems like that's a big one. You really, especially if I have a high-end graphics card, and I install a Plasma distribution, I better not have screen tearing. I shouldn't have to go play around in some config file in my /etsy directory. But what is great is that you do have the freedom, because it is free as in freedom, that you can go in that directory and play with that config file and get that stuff. And you probably were able to get help on that stuff. I bet you probably asked in some kind of support forum somewhere. And one of the great things about this community is how helpful this community is. Yeah. Right. And I had another super chat to catch up on. Hey, DT, what do you use as a display manager, if any? I currently use XDM or SDDM with Awesome. What is the best? Okay. LightDM is the only one I typically install. Been using LightDM forever. I have used Slim in the past. Slim hasn't been under development in many, many years, so I'm not comfortable installing Slim these days. XDM, I mean, that's a horrible looking display manager. I mean, it works, but never used SDDM. That's the one that comes with Plasma now. Yeah. Typically on my window manager only installs, that don't obviously come with their own display manager or login manager is really what you're asking about. The display manager is typically, when people talk about display managers, they're talking about Xorg and Wayland. What you're talking about is typically what we call our login manager, or different things. Some people call it a display server, display manager, login manager. It's confusing, but like DM for login managers. And some people have asked me in the past about light DM. Now that we're on that topic, is light DM really that light? Because it has light in the name. It doesn't seem to be a terribly bloated program. That's why I use it, and it just works, and it looks good. I don't really play with it or anything. I install light DM. I install one of the light DM greeters, and that's it. It just kind of works. So. If I was only installing one window manager on my system, I probably wouldn't even bother with the login manager. I'd probably just start X, right? But you guys know me, I've got like 15 different window managers installed, so I need a login manager. It makes my life a little easier. Well, what distro do you prefer between KDE Plasma and Elementary OS? Wow. Well, KDE Plasma is not a distribution. That's a desktop environment. So you're probably asking, KDE Neon maybe is probably what you meant? Or any KDE distribution. Well, just any Plasma distribution versus Elementary OS. If I had to run one, I don't hate Pantheon, the Elementary OS desktop environment. I don't hate it. It's not very configurable. It's kind of locked down. It's not a lot to it. But that's okay. Well, I could run Plasma too. I don't run desktop environments, so we've talked about this earlier. So I've actually never been a desktop environment guy ever in Linux. When I got into Linux, I pretty much almost immediately started using window managers, standalone window managers. Never used the big desktop environments, GNOME and KDE and XFCE and all that stuff. Even back then, and not now, so. All right. Let's see. You guys, how long have we been streaming here? We've been going about an hour and a half. We'll make this a nice 2-hour live stream. We'll go another 27 minutes or so. You guys got any other questions and comments? Go ahead and get them in. This has been fun. And this has been nice. Free as in Freedom Friday. Should we end with the free software song? If we do the free software song, you all have to sing along. That's what we should do. We should fire up Jitsi, get as many people. There's 180 of you guys watching. Get 180 of you guys join, and we all sing the free software song. And Peter, yeah, I remember DT blaming KDE for tearing while it was Nvidia, which was to blame. Well, if you can fix it, though, shouldn't the KDE guys try to fix it for you? Obviously, yeah, everything is Nvidia's fault. But let's not just give the KDE guys a pass, Peter. Yeah, the accordion is the best instrument, yeah. Wow, we have Mel Gibson in the chat. How you doing, Mel? I guess he liked my thumbnail. Not unusual, though. Usually when I talk about Microsoft Windows or just anything Microsoft related, we usually get Bill Gates in the chat. Well, I didn't see Bill here this evening. He must be out on a Friday night. ADT, what keyboard do you use? I use the Ergodox Easy. The Ergodox, you know, the split keyboard. I've done a couple of videos about if I can get it. I may not have enough cable here to actually get it in the shot area. Yeah, I can't. I don't have enough slack in the cord. But the split screen, or split keyboard, the Ergodox. Do a search on my channel for Ergodox. If I go back to the browser. I bought this keyboard a little over a year ago. Here is the initial review, the Ergodox Easy. The ridiculous, incredible mechanical keyboard. You know, you can see the picture of it, the split kind of keyboard. And I've been using it ever since I made that video. That has been the keyboard sitting at this desk that I use every day. And you see 1 year after, you know, using the Ergodox Easy, you know, my thoughts after 1 year of using it. Fantastic keyboard. I can't imagine not using the Ergodox now that, you know, I've gotten used to it. If something happened to this one, I'd buy another one. ADT, do you use news groups? And if yes, which reader? No, I haven't. I haven't bothered with news groups in years and decades. Back when Usenet was kind of usable, I really liked the Usenet. But then, of course, once the internet exploded and AOL came on the scene around 96, the Usenet became unusable because it was just flooded with nothing but spam. So, not even worth checking out. But as far as which reader, yeah, you mentioned Emacs. Yeah, I'd probably just use Emacs. What I use for my RSS feeds is Emacs these days. Matter of fact, I don't often check my email in Emacs because a lot of times when I get email, I'm actually not at my computer. I do have an email client on my phone. But if I don't check it on my phone, I'm at my computer. I happen to have Emacs open. I actually have MU4E inside Emacs to check my email. I still need to do a video about MU4E, the email client in Emacs. I need to do a video about LFeed, which is the RSS client in Emacs. Both fantastic programs. Yeah, don't tempt me with a good time. Yeah, well, we might have to get you guys singing. DT, will you review Minix? No, probably not. Is it even still under development? I haven't heard anything about Minix before. I mean, I know historically, you know, Linus, of course, patterned Linux after Minix. You should put a wig and beard on and look like Richard Stallman to sing the song. I have thought about that. I have thought about buying a fake beard from Amazon, something cheap, just a, you know, big bushy beard and long hair for the wig. I've thought about that for that very reason, to sing the free software song. That seems a little too cheesy though, right? That's not the kind of thing I would do on my streams. There are other Linux content creators out there that would stoop to that kind of level, but that's beneath me. Francisco says, hey DT, what projects do you recommend for a new Linux user to help develop important skills? And what programs do you recommend learning early on? Okay, some important skills. The most important skills are just opening a terminal and learning the basic stuff at the command line. So, you know, moving around the directory structure, you know, CD, ls, how to copy and move and remove files, you know, all the basic shell commands. I would start there. I've got videos on all that stuff to help you out. Once you get a little further along in that stuff, you know, something you probably want to check out eventually. I would seriously check out the Vim tutor. Open your terminal and make sure you have Vim installed on the system, and then type Vim tutor, all one word. Takes you about 20-30 minutes to run through the Vim tutor. It will teach you Vim, at least the basics. Once you run through it one time, you kind of know Vim. Not that difficult. Once you start using Vim, you can do a lot in a text editor at that point. You're wanting to develop important skills. What programs? I'm thinking more about that. You know, a good book to invest in, other than the Free as in Freedom book. Of course, that's more talking about the philosophy of free software. Here is a great book. It will focus. That is the Linux Command Line and Shell Scripting Bible. And it is written by probably multiple authors. Yeah, it's published by Wiley. It is written by Richard Bloom and Christine Breshanen. Okay. So, great book to learn the command line. You know, a lot of the standard shell commands and everything. All right, let me get back to where I was in the chat here. All right, so Bruno says, hey DT, I've changed from i3 to DWM and couldn't be happier. I get the impression it is actually simpler to customize. On i3, I had to download scripts for everything, master and stack layout, etc. Yeah, I hated that with i3 too. Seemed like I had to go get some third-party scripts, and it seemed all very hacky, i3, everything about it. It's like that thing was held together by duct tape, right? So I would... Yeah, and I would agree. Like for me personally, you know, if I only could choose between i3 and DWM for my window manager to use forever for the rest of my life, DWM would definitely be the one I would go with. But again, personal preferences. You know, some people are different. Ben says he's going to try DWM. Yeah, you might like it, Ben. DT, what phone are you using? I have a Samsung Galaxy 10. And Prophetic 777 says, sup. Yeah, dog. What is the free software song? I am clearly missing out here. Yeah, you're missing out. Let me pull up the free software song PDF. I know I have it somewhere here. This is the official song of the free software movement. It was written by Richard Stallman. Well, actually, the tune is an old Bulgarian folk song, but he added the words. So the lyrics are by Richard Stallman. Join us now and share the software. You'll be free. Hackers, you'll be free. Where you guys at? Nobody else was singing? If you want to see an actual performance of the free software song, go to my channel here and do a search for the free software song. I think I titled the video. If I can type, let me get straight in front of the keyboard here. I'm just doing a search for free software. Here it is. The free software song, DT and RMS Duet. Share the software. Matter of fact, since it's my video, it won't get me demonetized. I guess I could play it. Give us a beat, Richard. I like it. That's tight. Join us now and share the software. You'll be free. Hackers, you'll be free. Join us now and share the software. You'll be free. Hackers, you'll be free. Hoarders can get piles of money. That is true. Hackers, that is true. But they cannot help their neighbors. That's not good. Hackers, that's not good. Ooh, that was out of tune. When we have enough free software at our call, hackers at our call, we'll kick out those dirty licenses evermore. Hackers evermore. One more time. Join us now and share the software. You'll be free. Hackers, you'll be free. Join us now and share the software. You'll be free. Hackers, you'll be free. Thank you, Richard. So, I hope that answered the question. Aren't you glad you asked me what the free software song was? So if you... It's an interesting tune, right? All right. Hey DT, I don't know if it's a repeated question. What is the mic you are using right now? This is the Electro Voice RE27ND. Low Spec says, gotta go. Thanks for the stream. Thanks, Low Spec. Thanks for hanging out. We're going to hang out here probably another 10, maybe 15 minutes. We're going to make it a 2-hour stream. So we've been streaming about an hour and 47 minutes. Wow. Seems like we just started though, doesn't it? Crazy how the time flies when you're having fun. On Geeks, Nano was the default editor. Was Nano there? That's good they included at least one editor. I actually didn't check to see if Nano was there. I assumed it wasn't. I knew Vim and VI were not there. Emacs is also not installed by default. But it makes sense they install at least one editor, and if you're going to install an editor on a GNU operating system, GNU Geeks, then it would make sense that the GNU guys would put one of the GNU editors since they have 4 of them. I don't know why the GNU project has 4 different editors, but they developed, of course, Emacs, Nano, Ed, and Mo. Now, really, they only developed 2 editors because let's ignore Ed and Mo. Nobody's going to use those. So they developed Emacs and Nano. And Rocco from Big Daddy Linux says hi. How you doing, Rocco? Rocco, while you're in the chat, I'm going to ask you a question. Now that Ballistic Overkill is done, if I wanted a nice, cheap first-person shooter that's really fun, and I wanted to buy it on Steam, because I know you've tried them all, what is a good first-person shooter? Like if I wanted to do like a community game night, here on the channel. Ballistic Overkill was great, and everybody loved it because it was only like $5. So is there something reasonably cheap that's a nice first-person shooter? We've been doing Xenotic, which is free and open source software, but I was wanting to switch it up a little bit, maybe try something different the next time I do a gaming stream. DT, have you ever experimented with the herd? Coming soon. I'm going to try GNU Geeks with the herd kernel in a VM. We'll take a look at it. Trying it on real hardware. I mean, GNU Geeks with the Linux Libre kernel. It isn't going to be great on most hardware. Imagine it with the herd kernel. It's going to be unusable. So I'll try it in a VM. But we will do something on the channel with the herd kernel at some point. Probably soon. Stay tuned. Rocco says, I'll be honest, I was not singing along. That's unfortunate. I should have had the words on the screen, though. It's probably you just didn't know the lyrics. Next time I'll flash the words on the screen. Let's see, I lost my place here. Yeah. I got my harmonica and piano ready, says Adam. Yeah. That's what I need. I need to buy me a harmonica. That would be fun to play on the streams as well. DT, what laptop do you use? I have a couple of different test laptops. I have a Toshiba Satellite and I have a Lenovo ThinkPad. The ThinkPad is what GNU Geeks is running behind me. That is a ThinkPad. That is a E535. It's kind of weird how Emacs isn't on there. Well, GNU Geeks is a minimal installation, so like nothing is installed on it. I mean, it's a few base packages. You get the kernel and the init system, but I mean, you really don't make some of the core utils, things like that, but you got to install almost everything on that operating system. So it makes sense for Emacs not to be on there. Yeah, Rocco, Big Daddy, is messaging Mel Gibson. I love your movies. Yeah. I saw one of Mel's recent movies on Netflix the other night, getting off track here, from Linux. Bloodfather. It was actually a pretty good movie for old Mel, doing an action film. But it was actually a pretty good flick. If you guys are on Netflix, check out Bloodfather if they're still playing it. It wasn't bad. Got the bouncy ball, be cool too, with the words, yeah. Yeah, that you got me thinking now, Mel. Next time I do a song like that, get the lyrics and a little bouncy ball. I bet I could pull that off. Yeah, so OBS Dark says, DT, a game you can play and is free is Soldat, but it's not a first-person shooter. Okay. Actually, stop playing games was a good decision for me because now Windows is completely unnecessary. I only use Linux and Hackintosh. Yeah. If you're not a gamer, this really eliminates a lot of the need to have a Windows installation around, doesn't it? Hey DT, radicalized Emacs extremist here, thanks to your vids. Yeah, a lot of you guys finally tried out Emacs. And it's one of those things I'm really happy that I spent some time learning Emacs myself. There's so many people that do Linux content, right? They do the same things. There's so many videos out there, here lately, especially in the last year or two. All of a sudden, everybody's wanting to teach you guys how to use Vim, which is great. Love Vim. Not that much Emacs content. A few guys that do some Emacs content, but there's not much out there. So I was really happy to get you guys onto Emacs, especially if you're like me, you've spent some time with Vim, kind of how Vim works. Getting into Emacs is not a complete shock to the system, right? Especially if you use evil mode. It makes sense, right? It's that next progression. I try to cover topics on my channel sometimes that I know they're not sexy topics. They're not going to get a lot of views, and most people are not going to cover them, right? Like the 10 or 15 videos I've made really focusing on the Xmonad window manager. Nobody's going to do that, right? It's not like that's going to get a ton of views, but the views it does get, you people are very appreciative that I do those videos and put my configs out there on GitLab and do all that stuff. And that's why I do that. I do this to help people. And I'm one of those guys, I was out there, I trying these various programs, whether it be Emacs or these window managers or whatever it happens to be, and I'm looking for content on them, and I can't find it. And, I want to help you guys out. I don't want you guys to have to go through some of what I went through to learn some of this stuff. Because imagine, the content that's out there now, especially now that I put out this content about things like Xmonad and Qtile. I first tried Xmonad 12, 13 years ago. There was no videos on Xmonad then, right? You weren't going to find that many tutorials, but you weren't going to find anything. Basically, you were going to find the Haskell documentation. Hey, go write you a config file now. That's how I got into it. I'm trying to make the process a little easier for you guys. Yeah, been using for 4 months, now on Arch and DWM. I love it. Welcome aboard. I'm glad we have you. So I'm assuming, are you new to Linux? You said you're now on Arch and DWM. Are you just switching from Windows, or were you already on Linux? Maybe you're just on Arch for 4 months. I'm assuming you're probably just coming to Linux, so surely you wouldn't switch to Arch and feel the need to tell everybody you switched to Arch. That's not the way Arch users act. Emacs is awful, says 32 gigs. You're awful, 32 gigs. Where's the ban button? I'm just kidding. You can stay. I don't know. Watch what you say from here on out, though. I just shared my first Emacs package today. Oh, cool. That's something I haven't really thought about, is packaging something for Emacs, like doing an Emacs plugin and trying to get it packaged. That might be fun. Peter, I'm going to guess that DT loved Lethal Weapon. The Lethal Weapon films were not bad. If we're talking the best films as far as Mel Gibson films, I like the Mad Max films. Probably more than Lethal Weapon. Though Lethal Weapon 2 was fantastic, but Lethal Weapon 2 was fantastic not because of Mel Gibson. It was fantastic because of Joe Pesci, right? Hey DT, Super Tux Kart is a really fun racing game. Yeah, I know Super Tux. Yep, it's the Mario Kart clone. Yeah. I was looking for a first-person shooter for us to play, though, but we could do some Super Tux on a stream. I don't hate that idea. Yeah, and that's what I was thinking too. Rocco said, yeah, to be honest, now that we don't have Ballistic Overkill, it was so awesome, but without it, you're down to CSGO, Insurgency, Verdun, Tannenberg, Team Fortress 2. So I have CSGO, Insurgency, and obviously Team Fortress 2 is free, as in cost. Team Fortress 2 is probably the one that would make the most sense. Although CSGO, even though it's not free, most people probably, if you're on Steam, you probably already bought CSGO. So I'd probably do Team Fortress or CSGO maybe the next time I do a gaming stream. It's kind of what I was thinking anyway. I was just hoping there was something else out there that, something for $10 or less that was as cool as Ballistic Overkill, because it was such a great game. It had everything you could want in a first-person shooter, and it was priced right. Hey DT, have you ever played with LaTeX or any formatting language? I have not. I have not really had the need for LaTeX. I may take a look at it at some point, play around with it, get into LaTeX a little bit, but not something I've ever needed to do before. Yeah, DT, as a Haskell programmer, I still have absolutely no clue what my xmonad config does. Yeah. Well, you probably know more what it does than most people. You at least can recognize what some of the code is doing, I would hope. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to kill the stream here in just another minute or two. I'm going to read a couple more questions before I go here. Yeah, CSGO is really good, but I think Team Fortress 2 would be great with a lot of people. That's probably what I'm going to go with, is Team Fortress. I may do that this weekend. I think tomorrow, I've got a video I've been kicking around. I'm going to do a pre-recorded video tomorrow, but maybe Sunday I'll do it like a gaming live stream, with the community. Let anybody that wants to join. Typically, you guys, if you guys are on Steam and have Team Fortress 2, you can join a game with us. Obviously, not everybody can join, but Team Fortress, holds a pretty good bit of people. So we might could get a lot of us in a room. And we can voice chat on Discord. I do have a Discord channel that we could all jump into and chat. At DT, Joe Pesci had a really annoying role. Yeah, but he nailed it, right? Joe Pesci is one of the best actors ever. Not even kidding. course, some of his gangster roles, like in Goodfellas and, things like that. Even the recent one in The Irishman, or even the old school movies, Casino, he was great in. But really, comedy. Joe Pesci is great at comedy. Lethal Weapon 2 is a great example, but My Cousin Vinny, he is hilarious in that movie. You guys have never seen this old movie called My Cousin Vinny? Joe Pesci. Great comedic actor. Underrated. And yeah, Apocalypto was awesome because of Mel Gibson. Yes, that was a fantastic movie. That was produced by Mel Gibson. He doesn't actually star in the movie, but yes, Apocalypto is an amazing film. Yeah, Mad Max was awesome. Yeah, the Mad Max films were, well, the first two Mad Max films were okay. Beyond Thunderdome, it's watchable, but it wasn't that great of a film. Yeah, don't forget Home Alone. I forgot Joe Pesci and Home Alone was great too, yeah. All right, guys. Well, it's been a little over 2 hours. I'm going to go ahead and get off of here and call it a day. Before I go, I do want to thank a few people, though. I need to thank the patrons of the channel. I'm going to flash some names across the screen. So these are my supporters over on Patreon, because without these guys, we wouldn't have this free as in Freedom Friday stream. So they are the sponsors of this show. I want to thank each and every one of you guys, too, that are hanging out in the YouTube chat. I want to thank everybody that had questions and comments, because really, without you guys, this wouldn't be a stream, right? The whole point is interacting with you guys. So thank each and every one of you guys. Let me get out of here, and peace.